Do you think they'll get those city-run grocery stores? Mondays with Mike.
Mondays with Mike. Mondays with Mike.
This week, Election Day happened on November 4th. It's now November 8th. It was a good night for Democrats, even though there weren't many elections. Those that occurred had a lot of Democrat victories. For example, Donnie won in New York City, and Democrats won for the New Jersey governor and the Virginia governor as well. What I'm wondering is, what do these results mean in terms of what voters were thinking? Will there be a material impact on policy? I saw that Trump said something like, we lost because of the shutdowns, so might there then be a political calculation wherein shutdowns are brought to a swift end? What say you?
Okay, in terms of what voters are thinking, it's pretty clear that if there is an impact from the shutdown on politics, it's that voters are blaming the Republicans right now for the shutdown. Because if you saw a huge backlash to the Democrats refusing to vote for the continuing resolution, it would have shown up in the politics. But right now, it's very clear that there's a political sentiment that's not happy with the Republicans and how they're navigating this shutdown. There are options that were available to them and choices that they could have made, and that the political calculus to just not have the House meet at all during this time and to just keep saying, oh, there's nothing we can do, there's nothing to negotiate, there's no compromise that can be made. Clearly, voters are seeing that it's pretty disingenuous, and that's one of the impacts that's occurring. But this is also very common. So, in elections immediately following a presidential election, the voters tend to vote for the opposing party, whoever that is, just as a form of checking the power of the president. But in terms of what voters are thinking, it's also very clear that whatever mandate or sentiment that got Trump back into office that existed in 2024, that's pretty much gone. It's evaporated because some of the things that he said he was going to do haven't happened. He said he was going to bring down the price of, what was it, eggs, milk, food. He was going to bring down inflation. And instead, the economic strategy right now from the Trump administration has been one of economic hardship for a lot of people because the tariffs are to be a tax on consumers, right? And taxes increase prices of things. And because it's a tax that's not just on consumers, but also on distributors, suppliers, the people who make stuff, it's not just that the end consumer feels the impact, it's that every step of the chain feels the impact, which then increases prices even more, that it makes it even more difficult for the products to get to market, for the products to even get to the consumer at all. Anytime you increase the price of anything anywhere in the chain, the price goes up for everything. So there's that. Is there a material impact on policy? Yes, in New York City, absolutely in New Jersey, and absolutely in Virginia, because for them to enact legislation and policy within those states, they have to get the governor's say so. They have to get the governor's approval, pretty much. And so there's going to be a material impact on policy in that respect, that options that may have existed before for Republican legislatures, although I think a lot of seats flipped in some of those states. So it's not so much that there's a Republican majority, but the point is that the options to enact any kind of agenda that is contrary to those governors isn't going to happen. The governors have the bully pulpit and they have effectively the ability to veto. In terms of New York City, that's a more complicated question because some of the policies that Mamdani wanted to enact absolutely require state cooperation. And I don't think the political realities of New York State are such that some of those things are going to get passed. It's just not going to happen. So the one thing the mayor can do for sure in New York City is that it can have a material effect on policies related to policing. That's a big one. So in terms of cooperating with the immigration and ICE and Homeland Security. So do you remember there was that big early on in the Trump 2 in the second Trump administration, there was that big moment where all the prosecutors quit en masse because they wouldn't drop the prosecution on Mayor Eric Adams of New York City, and that the trade-off there was that by lifting the prosecution, ostensibly he was going to help them with immigration enforcement. Mayor Adams dropped out of the race. He's not going to be the mayor of New York City anymore starting January. So whatever they gained from that is gone, right? There is no, he's gonna not gonna have any power anymore. And so that, at least in that respect, yeah, there's going to be a material impact on law enforcement, on policing. And if you listen to Mamdani talk, he's made statements to that effect, essentially that everybody in the city has to follow law, which I would assume includes federal law enforcement, right? If federal law enforcement is engaging in policing tactics that are contrary to city law or state law, that there's going to be a difference of opinion now from the boss of the cops in New York City, which is what the mayor is. In terms of other material impacts on policy, the mayor of New York City does have some influence on like enforcement decisions and prosecutorial choices, and it can levy some influence in some ways of where monies are directed. It's going to have a difference compared to the previous mayor for sure.
I have a question. Do you think they'll get those city-run grocery stores?
It depends. I think one thing that mayors can do is if they have any land or property that's vacant or just sitting idle that the city's not using, that I do think the mayor has some sway over whether those properties can be used for anything. And so in that respect, if they want to run a city grocery store, they could. If they have the property for it, they can hire. He's got hiring and firing powers and they've got a budget. So technically, because cities are a little bit different than the federal government and state governments, they have more degree of latitude in things they can do. But again, I'm pretty sure New York City also has a council, right? And the council has to cooperate with the mayor. It's not like the mayor has absolute authority to just say, yep, I'm going to do everything. He just can advocate for things and come up with creative ideas and then propose it to the council. And the council will be like, yeah, sure, we'll do it because you just won mayor and we want to get reelected too. So your electorate is our electorate. We're going to work at it. But some of the things he talked about were more dreams than reality in terms of what can be accomplished, but he can accomplish some things for sure. Better than the alternative of accomplishing nothing, saying we're working on it, but never actually delivering. That is the difference. At least in this respect, I believe faithfully that Mamdani is actually going to make a good faith effort to deliver on the things he promised he was going to deliver on. And you can see that in the transition team he's hired and the people he surrounds himself with, that he's actually going to keep his word. In terms of what Trump said for the political calculation that the shutdown's soon to end, I'm not so sure. So the issue there is that the ones prolonging the shutdown, yes, Trump has a part in it because technically he has the ability to just summon Congress. He can say, show up and talk. He has that power. We talked about this previously that he technically can just do that. He can say, this is a situation that's so severe that you just have to meet and talk to each other and fix this. Now, do it. And if he does that, then yeah, that would be the calculation. I don't think he's going to do it. He could. I don't think he's going to. But in terms of the Republicans and the in the House and the Senate, I don't know, because the Democrats in the Senate just proposed this very simple 1 year extension on the tax credits, and the Republicans said nope. They just had that vote. So clearly they're still holding on to this idea that they just want the vote on the continuing resolution. That's it before they get into any other business. Where I do think the calculation could change is actually in the rank and file of the House Republicans because they see the writing on the wall, right? Since a lot of these Republicans are from states where they thought their seat was secure, but obviously not, right? That especially Virginia is one of those states where they may have been in a position to think that they didn't have to work for it. The last governor of Virginia was a Republican. Now it's a Democrat. Oh, maybe the representatives from Virginia have to seriously reconsider their position on not continuing to not compromise for the shutdown, and that they may exert their power within the caucus. Because remember, there are tools that representatives have that exist separate from the Speaker of the House. So the Speaker of the House gets to set the calendar, but remember, there's this thing that they're trying to do right now, the discharge petition, where if enough members of the House of Representatives say, I want this on the floor of the House to be voted on, period, then they can do that for virtually anything because they control the House, right? The power, in some ways, the Speaker of the House is more like a referee than my way or the highway, in the sense that the representatives, the House of Representatives, with enough numbers, can do almost anything. They can change the rules, they can decide the calendar, they can put them in recess, take them out of recess. It's more of like a respect thing. Oh, we don't think that we have the political capital now to do that. But if this gets really bad, some of these states, Virginia in particular, have way more federal employees and workers as part of their districts than almost any other state. And so those specific representatives may start making a real racket, like yelling and screaming and going on TV and writing op-eds and doing whatever they can to be like, this has to stop, because a whole bunch of their constituents aren't making any money and they're freaking out and they're getting really stressed out. The only other circumstance I can see it having a material impact is on this thing with them canceling flights. So if it gets really bad, members of Congress can't fly back and forth, or if the economy just starts taking a serious hit every day, there may be pressure on the part of the House Republicans to get Mike Johnson to reconsider his position on not compromising, not negotiating, and not having the House in session right now. I guess the one other big power they have is that technically they can vote out the Speaker of the House if he's just not doing a job that they agree with. And if enough of the House Republicans feel the burn, as it were, pressure, the stress from their constituents on either healthcare or the effects of the shutdown for SNAP or for air travel, if that gets really bad, then they could technically vote him out. I don't know that they will, but they could. Or they could use the threat of voting him out, similar to how they used the threat in the past to try and enact certain policy positions. That was the compromise that got McCarthy out, was that they changed the rules on how to remove a speaker just to end a different, I don't know if it was a shutdown, I think it was the debt ceiling fight, but that was the whole compromise. That's how he both became speaker and lost being speaker. They came up with a compromise which got enough people to vote for him. And then, because he gave away so much of the power, they then used the rules they created to kick him out. And so Mike Johnson, I think, does understand that tenuous position that he's in as well, that they could just vote him out if he really annoys them.
That's funny that you said to get McCarthy out, and I thought Joseph McCarthy was Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy,
No,
of
Kevin
course.
McCarthy.
Yeah, it's like you got the Kennedys, and then you got that Kennedy guy from Louisiana these days, and every Senator Kennedy.
They are not they are not the same.
No, I wonder if they're related. Okay, so the flight delays. Now that's a reduction of about 10% in the aviation of the number of flights. It's going to affect 40 airports. I guess it could get a lot worse. I would think that the government officials would prioritize their own flights, but maybe they have the ability to do that. Maybe they don't. Maybe the FAA is a mass sick call-out, and that brings them to their knees.
Yeah, he was saying it's going to go up to 20% if they don't get this resolved. Already, 10% is hundreds, if not thousands of flights. 20% is more. That's a lot more. And it's going to get it's not going to get pretty. If the flight delays or cancellations happen during Thanksgiving, which is one of the busiest weekends of the year for travel, I don't know. That's when people start really paying attention, because they can't make it to Thanksgiving, so they can't yell at each other over food, just over the phone.
Yeah, yelling at people on the phone in Thanksgiving. It's like watching a train crash in slow motion, and you go there on Thanksgiving, and you know that it's coming, and then it's, oh no, don't call all the relatives. Okay, but Trump said it's the shutdowns. My question more went to, do you think that Democrats won because of immediate concerns, or do you think they won because of the ongoing difficulties, the bumpy ride in 2025 more broadly, or where they think the country's going? Do you think it's bread and butter issues, the immediate, or do you think it's more chin scratcher?
Issues for the long term.
I think it's the immediate. So
yeah,
the Trump is effectively lying when he says that prices are down and everything's affordable. It's all great. It's not an issue anymore. He's been saying that recently. No, consumers aren't dumb. They pay attention. They're very price conscious, especially for things like groceries, because they can see in real time if I'm paying for something that was $1 less the week before and it goes up $1 again a month or a week later, they notice, especially for essentials, the price of beef, price of eggs, price of milk. People are very conscious of what's going on. I think one of the issues that, I notice it, is the price of coffee. So when you impose huge tariffs on places like Brazil and other countries that have coffee, it increases the price of coffee. And when you drink coffee, like I do every day, you notice the price of coffee.
Yeah. Coffee at Costco went up by at least like 33%,
Yeah.
like recently.
It goes up. It doesn't go down. For something like that, where it's a recurring cost that you see every day, you can hand wave away all you want. Oh, the tariffs are great. They're wonderful. Oh, prices are down. No, they're not at all in terms of there being like no inflation. Look, if the situation was good, the Fed wouldn't be cutting rates, if that makes any sense. If the situation was all good and dandy, the the Federal Reserve would be like, nothing to see here, business as usual, just keep going on. Instead, they're coming out with these like doomsday statements. People aren't hiring, prices gone up because of tariffs. It's not good. We're having real difficulty balancing both inflation and low levels of unemployment. We don't know what to do. We're just going to keep cutting rates. That's what I'm getting from the statements they put out.
But many of the governors, many of the Federal Reserve governors came out after the recent cut and said, we weren't even sure if we wanted to cut because we're still worried about inflation. So they were between a rock and a hard place. Please go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So that's the difficulty, right? Stagflation is we're going to get to a point. Have you noticed the numbers where they said that it's like the highest level of layoffs in 20 years or something like that, that there was a record number of
certainly in the tech sector
of layoffs in the private sector? Okay. They're also firing people in the federal government. Federal workers are furloughed. Workers who are currently working aren't getting paid. Maybe my math is a little fuzzy, but if you have millions of people who were working and aren't working and don't have money, that has to have some kind of effect on the economy. And then if you throw on that pile that, 10% of the GDP is SNAP benefits, something like that, in terms of the amount of money that's injected in the economy every time people receive their SNAP benefits every month. And that just all vanishes overnight, right? They're doing this fight over whether they're going to pay the full amount, half of the amount, whether it's going to happen at all. In the meantime, all that money that was going to these small businesses, these corner stores, these convenience stores, and to the big businesses, Walmart and grocery stores and all those different stores that were receiving this like regular injection of money from food stamp benefits, it's all gone. And that has to take a hit too, right? And when we're talking about something like food's perishable, right? If you make purchase decisions to buy really billions of dollars worth of food that's going to go bad within a certain time frame, if that doesn't get paid, someone's on the hook, someone's losing money, right? Someone's not benefiting from that decision that was made. That's one of the gripes I have with what happened with foreign aid is apparently they still have that warehouse full of food that they're just paying money to not give to anyone. Just warehouses full of food. Give the food to the people.
Is that where the government cheese is?
No, I'm talking about U.S. aid. So when they cut off all the U.S. aid, the inspector general for U.S. aid came out and said, okay, that sucked. Also, there's tens of thousands of tons of food sitting in warehouses that was supposed to be distributed, but wasn't distributed. So we're paying every day rent on these warehouses full of food, nutritional, delicious food. And the question becomes, do we throw the food away? Do we sell the food? What do we do with the food? And I'm thinking if they can't give out the food stamp benefits, can they at least give the food to food banks? If we're not going to do foreign aid, why can't we just redirect that food to domestic aid? What's the impediment? What's going on here? What's the impediment? And I don't know. I don't even know if the food's still there. I just remember that there was definitely food in warehouses that we were paying for. I don't know if we still are paying for, but for sure, I want to know what happened to that food because we already paid for it. Millions of dollars, right? What a waste.
Hey, you know those sushi restaurants where the sushi goes around on the conveyor belt?
Yeah.
Take it off? Yeah. Maybe. They could have, it's kind of like a baggage claim. But they could have this warehouse. They could put food out on it, and somebody wants it, they can come up and take it. And if it goes around too many times, they take it off and put another piece of food back on.
Why
Maybe
not?
that. Because what are people going to do? I don't think this falls under any other category on the show notes. It doesn't. So did you hear that late night Justice Jackson issued a stay and that SNAP benefits, which were back briefly, are now gone again, but they might be back again later?
Yeah, so there's this back and forth in the courts right now where I think Trump, the latest I heard is they want the Supreme Court to weigh in. Did the Supreme Court weigh in? I don't think they weighed in.
No, there was just a cancel the previous order and wait for us to weigh in. If I understood the radio that I heard.
Yes, then I think that's what the situation is right now, is that there were two different orders. One was pay for half, use that contingency fund. And then another was a judge said just pay for all of it, full freight, just pay the full amount. You can do it, do it. And so then the Trump administration said, please, Supreme Court, weigh in. Tell us if we have to do it or if not, and if it will abide by your decision. And so I think that's where it is right now in the timeline. Is the Supreme Court said they'll weigh in, right? That they'll look at the decision and then they'll make a decision. That's, I think, where we're at. That takes time, right? So that in the meantime, it's this like limbo of, are the people getting the food benefits or not? That is the limbo. But yeah, I was looking up the USAID thing, and it seems the food is still just sitting in warehouses. 60,000 metric tons of food seems like a lot of food.
You could feed at least 60,000 people with that, but probably a lot more.
No, it was earmarked apparently for millions of people.
Okay.
60,000 tons of food that was our money, right? We paid for it, taxpayer dollars, just sitting in a warehouse.
You know what that sounds like to me? You know what that sounds like to me, Mike? That sounds like waste, fraud, and abuse. Waste in terms of wasted food, abuse, loosely speaking, in terms of the poor people who should have gotten it, and fraud in terms of WTF is all, this is ridiculous.
Yes, it certainly does seem like waste, right? That we spent all this money on food that then isn't getting eaten by the intended recipients and isn't being given back to the U.S. people if it's not going to the intended recipients. The other reason it's the immediate impact and not like a long-term trend is that it's in reaction to what's going on. So specifically the tariffs, but also just the general sentiment right now in the country that the shutdown is the fault of the people in charge, that they didn't figure out a way to, one, not allow the shutdown to happen at all by just passing some. Look, why didn't they, look, for example, why in the big, beautiful bill didn't they just include a provision like we're not going to have shutdowns anymore? We're just going to fund everything until the midterms. Why are we always doing these piecemeal band-aid approaches of continuing resolution every few months? Congress has the power of the purse. They could just say, okay, we're just not going to do that. We'll just fund everything until, it's done. But instead, we're in this situation. That's because they keep passing the responsibility onto the next crop of representatives instead of just fixing it. The issue is that both parties like use this continuing resolution as a negotiating tool, as leverage, as a tactic, as we see with what the Democrats are doing now. They don't have to, right? They could just pass appropriations and then we're done, right? And then they just business as usual. Let's get to the job of doing their job. But instead, it's this like back and forth bickering, and it's silly. The ones you blame the most are the ones who had the most political power and squandered it, right? So right after Trump gets elected with the mandate by the electorate and all the people in charge get the power, they have the Speaker of the House, they've got the Senate. Why wasn't this solved day one, right? The first 100 days is the most important time of a presidency. Clearly, it wasn't on the agenda to just fix this particular problem because here we are. The first continuing resolution, they did it, they passed it, moved on. Well, why not fix it then? Why are we here? I think that's why voters are annoyed, is that this is the very first opportunity in a serious way for voters to, you see it with the special elections too, like the few members of the House of Representatives who were voted in, who were Democrats in those special elections, Rehava. But that's here and there. This is nationwide, big elections, voters get to have their say. And what's clear, very clear, is voters are not happy. They're not happy. This is the way they express that disagreement.
The proof is in the pudding. In this case, pudding in the warehouse that they didn't send out.
Yeah, that sucks. Where is that food going? Like it's just been sitting there.
It's for the flies.
All that food.
Oh boy.
I will say it's not all doom and gloom, right? That this at least is a silver lining to what's going on, that people are being more politically engaged and active. They're actually paying attention. It would have been nice if they'd paid more attention during the presidential election and actually thought critically of what it is they were being told, because it's not like Trump was hiding that he loved tariffs. And it doesn't take a lot of effort. It takes a little bit of effort. It doesn't take a lot of effort to understand that most countries on the planet don't impose sweeping 10% tariffs on every country they trade with. They definitely don't impose 100% tariffs on any country they trade with. There's a reason why voters in other countries looked at these issues and said, why we're not going to put people in power who are completely crazy about tariff policy. Maybe there's a reason that we moved away from tariff regimes. That if you look at history really closely, you'll see that tariffs are part of the reason we had a massive Great Depression, millions of people unemployed, huge amounts of market loss and businesses collapsing and serious government intervention just to keep everything afloat, right? Maybe the lessons from history are don't do that again. Don't do it, right? The real tragedy of this whole situation is that the Supreme Court right now is hearing the arguments on tariffs and they're going to deliver their opinion. But if they decide that the tariffs are, for the most part, illegal, there's going to be a circus of sorts when all these businesses say, and consumers and anybody who had to pay a tariff says, can I get my money back? My billions of dollars in taxes paid for these tariffs, can I get any of it back? If it wasn't supposed to happen, can we just turn back the clock? Where it gets really scary is they use the tariff revenue to pay for things. And the question becomes, how is that money going to be applied to the budget then? Is it going to be just a huge hit to the debt? And what if we get into one of those debt ceiling fights where that's its own, another bridge to be crossed in the future, but it's certainly on the horizon if this tariff thing doesn't go the way of like fully legal, fully appropriate, completely allowed to happen. If there's any nitpicking at all, if there's any element of it that says, nope, can't do it, can't impose these tariffs, or can't impose them as high as you are, or can't impose them in the way that you are, Congress has to vote on it or have a say. There's got to be some mechanism more than just like the whims of one person. Oh, I was annoyed I saw an ad at the Super Bowl or the World Series. I think it was the World Series. I was like, oh, I'm annoyed I saw Reagan on my television machine slap 10% tariff on everything from Canada. I've got to punish those Canadians because they showed St. Reagan talking about tariffs. Oh no.
Yeah, I don't like what's on the TV. Time for a tariff. How about this? This comes out on Truth Social. I don't like Simon Cowell's take on American Idol. He better shape up or Britain can enjoy a 200% tariff.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. The reason you don't want one person deciding tariffs for any reason is that it can become really petty. It can become vindictive. It can become and capricious. It's like, why are you taxing penguins? What did the ever do to you? What did the Penguin Islands ever do to you? What's going on? Why are we here? Congress has the power to tax, not the president. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the situation. It's that the voters have spoken. The question is just if they maintain that level of sentiment going into the midterms, because the midterms are the big election between the presidential elections. Because what's going to happen is if the Democrats get a majority of either the House or the Senate or both, then they have certain tools at their disposal to really grind everything to a halt, right? Massive amounts of subpoena power. They can do investigations. They can do lawsuits. There's any number of things that they have the power to do that you only get when you have the majority in the House and the Senate. For example, the House has the ability to incarcerate people if they really want to. They have a jail. And so if they subpoena someone and they're like, oh no, I'm just not going to comply, the House technically can just throw them in jail until they comply. They really can't do that. It's a power they have. It's not going to happen with the Republicans in the majority. They're just not going to do anything. But if there's corruption or illegality going on and the Democrats actually get power, I have to believe that they will make some kind of effort to actually uncover shenanigans going on in terms of money or corruption or whatever.
Do you know if the House jail is on premises?
I'm not sure. I just know they have the power.
Okay.
I don't know that they've ever really used the power all that much, but I know they have the power. That they can do that if they really want to. That you can have contempt of Congress, then get thrown in jail. So just don't annoy Congress.
Yeah, it wasn't on my list, but I'll make a note. Stay on the good side of those Congress people. Mondays with Mike.